Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is David and today we're going to have a look at some of the cheapest starters in Game Week 1. Of course, budget FPL assets are quite often the bedrock of our teams. They are what enable big spending elsewhere, and in a week where people are perhaps looking to upgrade Gabriel to Chilwell, or some people perhaps getting itchy on Salah, want to find a way to bring him in, budget enablers have never been more important. And so we thought we'd have a look back at what happened in Game Week 1. We spent a lot of time in pre-season trying to accurately predict which budget players in each position, so that's 4 million goalkeepers and 4 million defenders, 4.5 million midfielders and 4.5 million forwards, which of those were most actively involved in Game Week 1, which might help us get an accurate picture within a few weeks of who the most reliable starters are in those brackets. Now, before we move on to some detail on that, just a quick further announcement that, of course, we have extended the pre-season prices on Fantasy Football Scout membership, so you can save up to 30% with those prices if you sign up now. It is never too late to sign up for membership, especially when there's another game week deadline coming around the corner and you've got some decisions to make, perhaps with your bench or maybe even with your transfers and your captaincy. So don't forget to sign up for that before Friday's deadline. But yes, let's start off by having a look at the goalkeeping department and what happened among the 4 million options this weekend. Well, we had two starters in this bracket. One not so much of a surprise, and one feels like a real bonus that's been thrown to us by David Moyes. But let's start with the least surprising of the two, which is of course Matt Turner at Nottingham Forest. He actually made his debut for Forest against his former club Arsenal, made some good saves as well, and there's a lot of people who are thinking about actually starting him in Game Week 2 when Nottingham Forest are going to play Sheffield United, who didn't look too good in front of goal in Game Week 1. And of course, it's a week where it's a better fixture for Turner than Onana, Johnston, Pickford, and many of the other assets that are a bit more popular in those more expensive positions. Now, how long Matt Turner is going to remain a viable asset in Nottingham Forest does remain to be seen, because they have been searching for a new goalkeeper in the transfer window, and of course their pursuit of Dean Henderson is and the failed nature of that pursuit is very much why Turner was able to start Game Week 1, and we can't really see anyone else replacing him for the next few weeks, but do keep an eye on what happens in the transfer market to work out whether or not that's going to be a long-term investment for the season. But the biggest development, arguably, is over at West Ham. We spent a lot of pre-season trying to work out whether or not it would be Fabianski or Areola who would get the number 1 jersey, and it was perhaps a little bit too tricky for us in the end, although 23% of managers did go with Areola in the end, just in case. And what happened was Areola did get the starting berth against Bournemouth. But what's really interesting is the aftermath of this has, in my opinion anyway, actually solidified Areola's place in the team. Well, we'll start off with David Moyes' reaction. He was asked about the decision after the game, and he said, "Fabianski has been sensational for us in the time I've been here. The way he goes about his job is tremendous, and everything he does is very, very good. But the decision on this occasion was to give Alphonse the chance to stake a claim to the number 1. If you don't play well, then you've got somebody else breathing down your neck." So very much he's after some competition in the goalkeeping position, which makes a lot of sense in the modern world. Having two number 1s at the same club is not as abnormal as it used to be. You just got to look at Arsenal, where they've now got Raya and Ramsdale. Good luck picking between those two. But what is perhaps the most interesting development is the way that Fabianski took this news. Now, he did an interview, I think it was on Canal Plus Sport, I think in Poland. It was an interview that wasn't in English and was translated, and what we've got on the screen right now is a translation of what he said in that interview, completely publicly and, arguably against any advice from any internal West Ham media people, because he said, "I took the news, i.e. him not starting, awfully. Being honest, first of all, it was a massive shock. Second of all, the information made me angry. I wasn't mentally ready for something like this." And in some other places, he's quoted as saying he doesn't deserve this kind of treatment, which is incredible scenes, to be honest, to see a player come out and be so publicly against a manager's selection for Game Week 1 when he's still a West Ham player. And you would expect / hope that he's at least trying to get back into the team for Game Week 2. Now, could go into intricate detail in terms of the ins and outs of how this sort of things happened at West Ham and what's going on there. Perhaps leave that for the West Ham podcasters. I'll stay out of that debate for now. But the main thing is I would be very, very surprised if David Moyes hands Fabianski a start after speaking so out of turn. Even if he was right to feel that way, the fact that he's done that in a public interview, it makes it very difficult for Moyes to start anyone other than Areola. So I would be very surprised if Areola somehow lost his place for Game Week 2, didn't play too badly. And so I think we can largely rely on Areola for starts. In terms of whether or not we're going to substitute him in for whoever our first choice goalkeeper is, I think we need to wait to see West Ham's get a little bit better first. And that gives us a bit of time just to double check that Areola can get some clean sheets and some saves, etc. But yeah, very interesting developments there. But let's move on to defenders now. And there was quite a long list of 4 million defenders that started their games in Game Week 1. Some of these not too surprising. I'll just read off the list for the benefit of the podcast listeners. We had Jan-Paul van Hekke at Brighton, played 90 minutes. He's in just 1.3% of teams. Amin Al-Dakil at Burnley, 90 minutes again, 0.6% ownership. And Jordan Bayer, of course, played 73 minutes. He's in 4.8% of teams. The Burnley man, famously known as Beckenbayer, for the way that he plays. Then at Luton, we had three. We had Mads Andersen and Amari Bell, both playing 90 minutes in the back three. Issa Kabore, just 63 minutes. He's the wing back. He's the more popular. He's the second most popular of those three. Amari Bell still the most popular at 9.1%, perhaps just because he was in the game before Kabore. But what we've seen in Game Week 1 is that so far, Bell is the more 90-minute man. And then at Sheffield United, we've got George Baldock and Chris Basham, 90 minutes each. Baldock in 15.3% of teams and Basham in 0.4%. So let's just quickly go through some of those in more detail then. So on Friday, we saw El Dakil at Burnley. He played most of the match on the left-hand side of the back three for Burnley, but arguably, Bayer was the asset that looked more exciting from a fantasy perspective. He did come off on 73 minutes, but we think that's largely just due to cramp, so not the sort of thing you'd expect every week. But in that game, no Burnley player won more tackles or had more interceptions / clearances than Bayer. And if you want more information on the specific detail of how he played in that game, you can head to the members area and look at the match in a lot of detail, because yeah, Bayer was very impressive, especially in a game against Man City, who caused a lot of damage when they attack. So I personally was very impressed with him, and at some point may own Bayer at some point this season. Sheffield United next. Of course, Baldock is the one taking all the plaudits, really, and has done for some time. Wing back in a 3-5-2 system, being 4 million and largely being a 90-minute man is quite encouraging. And so in that game for Sheffield United, no teammate in any position, actually, that's included the midfielders and the forwards as well, no teammate in any position received more passes in the final third, total of 12. So that's exciting to see. Elsewhere with Chris Basham, we potentially have another 4 million Sheffield United defender playing out of position in midfield, but I don't think this one is going to catch on quite in so much as John Lundstrom did all those years ago. He was a bit of a surprise starter in this position, and he was in central midfield. Now, we're not entirely sure why this happened, but we can posit a few guesses. Number one, could have been a specific tactic to perhaps limit Ebere Eze, because of course Basham is actually a centre-back. The difference with John Lundstrom is he was never a defender, he always was a midfielder. So this could have been an instance of just shifting a centre-back into a central midfield role for largely defensive reasons. The other possibility, and it could actually be a case of both of these two things, is the fact that they just don't really have that many fully fit midfielders right now. The departure of Sander Berg hasn't really helped with that either, so they're a little bit short-staffed in that area. But what we're thinking here is that probably this isn't going to last too long, because we've got Vinny Souza and Anis Slimani closer to match fitness now, and of course Gus Hamer has joined the club as well. So we would largely expect that he would not be getting starts in midfield moving forward, but it's worth keeping an eye on. And finally, from the newly promoted clubs, anyway, we had three of them at Luton: Anderson, Bell and Kabore. And, Kabore did look good, was very quick, attacking right wing back, 3 crosses into the box. Also created a big chance as well, but did only last 63 minutes. Whether or not that was tactical, or perhaps, new player to the team and maybe wasn't quite ready to play 90 minutes yet, we will have to see. Worth keeping an eye on again. Now, the only 4 million defender to start this game week at a non-newly promoted side was Jan-Paul van Hekke at Brighton. He was at the back with Lewis Dunk. But again, this looks like one that we largely expect isn't going to last too long, because Adam Webster, 4.5 million, is not back yet, but not back to full fitness yet, but it should be soon. And of course, he's largely first choice alongside Dunk in a world where they don't have Colwell anymore. So yeah, I wouldn't get too excited about him just yet, because we just need to see what happens when Webster is back and fully available, and then we can go from there. Of course, with the rotation that we might see with the Europa League, it's possible that maybe Van Hecker gets some of the Premier League games and Webster gets the Europa League games. My suspicion is it might be the other way around based on their career trajectory up until this point. But again, it's worth keeping an eye on that. There was a couple of 4 million defenders who came on as substitutes. We had James Hill at Bournemouth. We had Malo Gusto, who's much talked about in pre-season, at Chelsea, and James Tompkins at Palace. Combined, though, those three guys, just 30 minutes. 15 for Hill, 14 for Gusto, and 1 for Tompkins. So, yeah, don't get too excited about those either. Midfielders. Now, we had three 4.5 million midfielders start game week 1. Perhaps the most high-profile of those in terms of fantasy potential is probably Carney Chukwuemeka at Chelsea. He had some good moments down the left-hand side against Liverpool, and of course being a winger playing in front of these fullbacks, it's going to be exciting at times, potentially a lot of overlap from that fullback, so it's not necessarily quite the same as an attacking winger playing in a team that doesn't have fullbacks that attack on the overlap as much as Chilwell and James do. And so what it meant was that he didn't have a single shot and he didn't create any chances in this game, and a lot of the attacking potential actually was taken up by Chilwell. He was quite active in and around the penalty box, so he had 5 touches in there, and so there's promising signs. But my initial feeling is that probably Chilwell is going to steal a lot of the stats in that area. The other thing, of course, is we don't know if he's going to be a regular starter. The injury to Nkunku probably helps him initially, but, Chelsea just keep on buying new players, so it's worth keeping an eye on. 80 minutes for him, 3.1% ownership for Chukwuemeka. Perhaps a more reliable starter, if you're just looking for a 4.5 million fielder who's just going to start every game and maybe not do very much, could maybe find that in Nakamba. 1.4% ownership for him. He played 90 minutes, but as we've said basically all summer, you can't really expect anything other than those starts. He took 6 shots and had as many key passes as that in 20 appearances last season, and he had just 3 touches in the final third at Brighton, but he did play 90 minutes. So that's something. And then Sasa Lukic at Fulham as well. He joined Harrison Reed in the Fulham central midfield and had a decent pre-season. And largely that's because of the injury to Palhinha. And when he's back from injury, we probably expect him to not feature so heavily as well. So it really is slim pickings in that 4.5 million midfielder bracket. And then, of course, you look at all of these extra ones who were substitutes. And there's not really much to get excited about. Shandon Baptiste at Brentford, 18 minutes as a substitute. Pape Sarr at Spurs, 15 minutes. Ben Doak, of course, came on for Salah, much to Salah's chagrin. 13 minutes. Lewis Dobbin at Everton, 7 minutes. Philogene at Aston Villa, 3 minutes. Andre Brooks at Sheffield United, 3 minutes. And then we had 3 other guys at Chelsea, City and Newcastle, 1 minute each. Anderson, who was talked up in pre-season, just a 1 minute, as perhaps was to be expected. McAtee at Man City and Ugochukwu at Chelsea as well, just 1 minute. So as I said, slim pickings in the 4.5 million midfielder. And it is very much the same for the forward line as well. We had just one 4.5 million forward start game week 1. That was William Asula at Sheffield United. 90 minutes for him, admittedly, and he actually didn't do too badly. Had an effort. He came close with a curling effort towards the end of the game, and largely spent a lot of that game just kind of running around and running the channels, and outside of that effort looked good but wasn't really given too much service, which is not too surprising based on how Sheffield United are set up currently. Whether or not he's going to be a long-term starter remains to be seen, as with a lot of these guys. We've got Ollie McBurney and we've got Daniel Jebison. They're out injured, so they will be back at some point, and we are largely expecting there to be some summer signings in this department towards the end of the transfer window, although one of them could be Cameron Archer, who is 4.5 million, and so maybe he becomes the 4.5 million starting striker at Sheffield United, so do have a look for that. In terms of the substitutes, we had Semenyo at Bournemouth, 15 minutes, Antoine Hackford, also of Sheffield United, 3 minutes, and Luton's Corley Woodrow got himself 2 minutes as a substitute. So again, not too much to write home about in the forwards department, although we think that maybe if Sheffield United can get Cameron Archer, we might have a regular starter in the 4.5 million forward department. So yeah, that is something we will have to keep an eye on and keep our fingers crossed, to be honest. If anybody's got 3 Aston Villa players like me, kind of signed Archer hoping he would go to Sheffield United, and if he doesn't, I'm locked out of getting Watkins. So hurry up, Sheffield United, sign him. Sign him quickly and save my team. But yeah. Hopefully that video was useful for people, especially if you're planning a few things for the Game Week 2 deadline. Perhaps maybe selling Gabriel and need to be able to upgrade to Chilwell and need a bit of spare money. Some of these guys might be able to help you. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's not too late to sign up for Scout membership. You can save up to 30% on those preseason prices. We have extended that offer, so make sure you make the most of it. But with that, I will leave you fine, folks, to the rest of your tinkering, and I will see you next time.